Cody. You can clearly see you got in a fight, so I guess physically, how you feeling after a very bizarre fight from what we saw?
Yeah, it was a very bizarre fight. My coaches had me prepared for a kind of similar style of him coming out aggressive and, chaotic, but we didn't think it was going to be that chaotic. We had some inverted fouls. We hit heads, I think it was in the second round.
Yeah.
He fell to his ass on that, and I didn't see Herb kind of like trying to intervene, but I was like, I'm not going to win off that or try to, land some shots when he was down. So I think the language barrier as well, him not knowing too much English. But, me being a veteran of the sport is like, I saw that he was hurt from the headbutt, and I didn't jump on him. And then the next round, I get inadvertently kicked, a few times, and I've never been hit that hard in the groin to where I was throwing up inside there, but I didn't want to, go on a win just from getting to that. And then, I rallied from the crowd, and then it was 30, 40 seconds later, got hit again. It was like ups and down. It was really hard to find my flow inside there. I heard my coach. I saw everything, hit me with some shots, felt good, never was completely out of the fight or so dazed from the shots, I remember he kicked me in the beginning of the fight, and I was fine, visibly it probably looked worse than it did, but I even had to look on the screen. I was like, oh wow, he really actually got me good, but I was physically there, so he did a good job of staying away from my power hand. We were trying to draw him into some power and some movement, so he stayed away. He attacked with that lead left kick, which was good on his part. He was chopping the leg down a little bit, really busting my knee up. So like I said, my movement was kind of altered from that, but I expected him to come out like that, guns blazing. His first fight in the States, fighting a former world champion on a huge card. He's a young kid, in his career, and he's dangerous. That guy loves to fight. He was hooting and hollering the whole time he was in for it, So I knew it was up against it. It was a great, he had everything to, gain from this fight. For me, it was just another fight, where I'm at in my career, and just to stay busy. And, now we got the win, go back and heal up, address some things, and keep moving forward with this momentum.
A lot to unpack there. I guess after the first low blow that you were throwing up from and everything, and you stood up, the camera got on you, and I think a lot of the broadcast, even online, was like, "Oh, here comes the old Cody," and they'll just rush forward, kind of into damage, and you did kind of blitz him right out of the gate, and then you kind of calmed down. So what's it like to, I guess, pull back because your opponent is standing there pointing down at you the entire rest of the fight, right, and you're still trying to kind of maintain composure?
Well, I knew that, me being elusive in my movement, he wasn't. I started to get in that flow, missing his leg, missing his punches, and I'm more of a counter striker. I was wanting to counter off his shots, mix the wrestling with it, get the jab going. So I was finally starting to do that. So him pointing there and wanting to go roll the dice, gamble inside there when, he's got a tough head. I hit him with some hard stuff. We headbutted. I kneed him, I elbowed him. It was a tough kid. But being able to stay composed during that time and hey, going back to the old me where I'm like, hey, this guy's wanting to stand and bang. Okay, let's do it. I looked over at my coaches and they're like, hey, tell me to breathe and calm down. And those guys are amazing. They know me better than I know myself. So they got me prepared for this fight. Like I said, it was a bizarre fight, weird fight, but we take the win and we just move from there.
And what was it like? Like you said, you've never really felt that type of, when you got kicked. We don't really see people throwing up in the octagon from that. So what was that? How'd that feel?
Man, I hate throwing up. I hate vomiting. It's the worst feeling ever. But in my mind, I was just wanting to stop dry heaving, and throwing up inside there so I can get back and resume the fight because my knee was so blown up that I didn't know if the adrenaline would, I don't know. My movement was already kind of, compromised inside there. So I wanted to try to, get this round started again. And then again, that happened directly after. So it was really hard to get my flow, get my range in there. But at the end of the day, even if it was, he got points taken away, I feel like I was landing the better shots. I was being elusive. I was getting I got 4 takedowns in the fight. So we'll just take it from there.
We don't always see 2-point deductions in a fight too. So I think that's a good step in the right direction for these referees because normally it's just warning, 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 and they rarely pull the trigger that often.
Yeah, you're getting, those kind of shots, it really can swing a fight. I mean, my adrenaline was gone. It was high, low, up, down. Like, man, I had nothing in me, but besides the crowd behind me to push me forward, and then the heart inside me to not want to give up. I was in a lot of pain. I was physically, I couldn't breathe. I was, throwing up. I had nothing in me, and so yeah, I think that them going to the extreme of taking points will stop people. Hey, if you can't kick in an area, then don't throw kicks. You're not supposed to hit there. I mean, you did 3 or 4 different shots. It's like, I don't know. So I think that was the right call. Obviously, I was wanting to not get kicked in the in the groin so I could get back in my rhythm and knock this full out and get a 100K bonus. But that wasn't in my hat tonight. It was an awkward, strange fight.
What do you want next for your career? Because you're clearly a veteran in this promotion, but you're also like still physically probably in your prime. You've outlasted a lot of the old guard. You got guys like Raul fighting like Rob Font right now, and that's a massive age gap. So I guess what do you want next for your career moving forward?
Yeah, it's great. There's a lot of up and comers that's coming in the fight. There's this David Martinez from Mexico. He's a young prospect that's just beaten 2 top guys. He just beat Cheeto a few weeks ago. Beat Rob Font earlier. He's in the top 10. I like his style. That's a good fight for me stylistically. To get me back into the top 10. But we just get back to work with my coaches and just keep evolving. Like I said, I had a great camp, great weight cut, great camp. We just evolved so much these last 8 weeks, and getting the coaches together and getting them on the same plan, the mindset of how I train, how I fight, and just little things. So get back to the drawing board and just keep getting better.
I guess when would you like to fight again? Because I think fans want to see Cody Garbrandt active moving for 2026.
Yeah, I love to be active too. We'll get some of the this knee checked out, make sure my nuts are still there. So and just go from there. Hopefully I'd fight before the summer. So it'd be great. I know they got some cards. Yeah, so hopefully just the injuries are at a minimum, and go take this next week, spend a time with my family. I just had a 2-month-old daughter. My son turns 8 next week, so I'm just excited to get home to them in one piece.
Cody, watching the fight tonight, it felt like going back in 2016, to be honest, and seeing like a prime version of Cody, no love. You don't look like really satisfied with the performance, but even though he landed a couple illegal shots, the fight was stopped a couple times, you looked like very precise, explosive, fast. Was there anything specific in the training camp, or maybe a mental adjustment that was the key factor to deliver such a performance tonight?
For myself, I can, only contest to my coaches. They believe in me so much, even when I don't believe in myself. They always remind me who I am, what I was able to do, who I am inside the training facility, who I am, that 2016 Cody Garbrandt you talked about, he's in there, I have that, and they remind me, like, I don't ever believe into my own hype, I always thought I was one of the best fighters in the world, and, getting back to my roots of boxing and wrestling, and then blending it together, Ben Stanoff has been a great addition to our team. We've been working with Alex Perez, a top flyweight, UFC fighter, amazing coach. He's such an amazing coach. He sees everything, blends it together. Billy Bigelow on the wrestling. So we really came together this camp and had a good training facility, good energy. I mean, every day we were in there just progressing and having fun. Like, I didn't feel like it was a work to me. It was, like, hey, it was going in there and just getting back to having fun, get back to my roots.
Cody, right here. You say it was just another fight for you, but I think you needed this win. You needed a win, right. And you came in the first round. You looked terrific. You fought with a lot of confidence. It wasn't like safety first, like some fighters would tend to do. And then it started to unravel because of what happened. The kick in the groin and another kick in. How did you keep yourself focused in this fight after that happened and not let it get away from you?
For myself, I lean on my coaches a lot. Alex Perez always tells me you're not going to win every second or every minute, every fight. They're going to win in spurts, win in, off the breaks, off of, things like that. So just knowing that's kind of part of the game. You know, you're not going to win every second of every round. You know, there's going to be those sprints that, you know, I can be able to, you know, capitalize on, like in the wrestling and the clinch work, you know, breaking off on knees, you know, landing those big shots and, you know, working on the feints. So just relying on that, you know, and understanding, like, you know, I might not win every second, but I'm going to win those, you know, when the fight starts to clash. And I felt like when it was clashing, I felt really good. But it was hard for me to get my rhythm and range inside there with the low blows.
Did you feel like you had this fight? Were you nervous at all when they were reading the scorecards?
No, not at all. I felt like, you know, even with the point deductions, and I felt like I did more. I had more takedowns. I thought I was more aggressive, landed more of the combos. I mean, he hit me with some hard stuff, with like leg kicks and things like that. But I don't think that, you know, you know, the bigger shots, you know, kind of got me down towards the end. But like I said, I think I controlled more of the martial arts, you know, field.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Cody over here. Talking about you and your performance, you talked during the press conference also about your family and how that was. When I looked outside, I saw you with your little daughter, the 2-month-old, with the pictures. Is that a reason that gives you the most motivation to keep going, even in a fight like this?
Yeah, you know, it's you know, we fight for money, you know, and fight for, you know, food on the table for them and give them the opportunity that I didn't have growing up. So that's all motivation that I need, you know, to be able to give the life that my children deserve with, you know, the opportunities that the UFC give us.
Last question for me. Usually people tend to forget that your wrestling is also very great, but we don't see it so often. I saw you a couple of times shooting and getting him. Why didn't you choose to let's wrestle and keep him down? And because you had some good shots also.
Yeah, you know, my wrestling coach is, you know, on me all the time about wrestling. He's like, dude, believe in your wrestling, believe in your wrestling. And I don't know, I just get so caught up in, you know, standing and banging. You know, I love that. You know, obviously it's fun, but, you know, martial artist, you know, so blending that together and really working on this camp was wrestling. We did a lot of wrestling and kind of like, you know, just drilling, getting back to the roots. You know, that's what I started doing, was wrestling and boxing. So blending them in. You know, I can wrestle with the best of them. I can hold them down. I can grapple. I can, you know, so mixed martial arts. So yeah, definitely. I mean, it was great. You know, I was a lot of times on the kick, I didn't want to. I kind of dipped into some kicks. So I think that's what that lead kick kind of like really didn't let me explode on a lot of my shots. And then again, I needed to feint, use my jab a little bit more, use that range, get inside range in the shots. But when I was able to shoot and get the takedowns, I you know, felt great.
Congratulations. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Cody back here. Congratulations. Cody, sometimes people start to read a little bit into the matchmaking. They're like, oh, do they want X, Y, or Z, this guy or that guy to win? You know, being the veteran, and obviously he's, you know, newer to the UFC, built up in one of their newer tournaments and road to UFC. At any point, did you ever maybe have that go through your mind? Like, is that what they think of me? Like, are they starting to be the, you know, are they starting to use me to build the next guy? Is that starting to happen? Was there ever any worry or doubt during the camp?
No, you know, there was never any worry or doubt. Any, you know, person that I fight or an adversary. You know, the thing is, you can't no one beats Father Time, you know. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to go out and fight, no matter who it is, whatever adversary they put in front of me, whether he's, you know, an up-and-comer, whether he's a veteran, whether he's, you know, this self-proclaimed killer. You know, I'm going to go out there and fight each time.
People talk, obviously, you know, very crazy fight, and you talked about just a lot of your experience and staying composed. Would a younger Cody Garbrandt have gotten into it when he started pointing down and everything in that final round? Or, you know, do you feel like your experience is essentially why you were able to avoid that? Do you feel like had you not had all of that, you would have had a very different ending to the fight?
What do you think?
I think younger you would have thrown down for the whole 3 minutes, and it would have been great.
Oh my gosh, I definitely would have. But you know, who knows if I would have been walking out there with a win? You know, it's like, you know, when you gamble inside there, it's 50-50. You know, I got all the skills in the world to be elusive, to work the jab movement, you know, head movement, and you know, a younger me was like, oh yeah, let's go, let's get the crowd, let's, you know, get this. But at the end of the day, like, I'm trying to, you know, be safe. I'm trying to, you know, get the win. I'm trying to be, you know, aggressive as well, but also go home to my family where, you know, years down the road, I'm not, you know, stuttering and drooling. You know, I'm trying to understand that I have a family at the end of the day, and get the win and provide for them. But I'm always going to be in one of those fights that, are going to be entertaining. And yeah, I mean, probably at a younger age, I didn't have that care. But now I have children and I'm a father, and I want to be there for my kids.
I know obviously you touched on it, but when he is pointing down, and obviously it's BMF night, you know what he wants to do. Are there words, are there sentences you're saying in your mind when he's doing like that multiple point down, and you know what he's trying to get you to do?
Yeah, for sure. He's trying to bait me into that. That's because, during that time of the fight, I started finding my rhythm. I started to really move a lot of his shots. His kicks weren't there, his punches weren't there. So he was trying to get me to stay in front of him, and so he could land those big shots and possibly put me away. So yeah, I wasn't falling trap of that. And I just stayed elusive and did what I needed to do to get the win. Good. All right, awesome. Thank you guys.